The ground trembled beneath Taejun's boots as he stepped deeper into the cavern. His flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing stone walls covered in strange symbols that seemed to shimmer under the beam. He had been an archaeologist for 15 years, but nothing in his career had prepared him for this moment. The symbols were not Korean. They were not Chinese or Japanese either. They looked almost artificial, as if someone had carved them with perfect precision thousands of years ago. Taejun was a tall man with sharp eyes that missed nothing. His dark hair was streaked with gray, a testament to his years of searching through history's secrets. He wore simple work clothes covered in dust, and his hands were calloused from years of digging. Behind him, Mireille scrambled down the steep stone pathway, her laptop bag clutched carefully against her chest. Mireille was different from Taejun in many ways. Where he was quiet and thoughtful, she was quick and animated. At 32 years old, she had already become one of Korea's leading cryptographers and linguists. Her dark eyes sparkled with curiosity as she joined him in front of a massive metallic door. The door was easily 10 meters tall and 5 meters wide, and it seemed to have been carved directly from the stone itself. It was covered in the same strange symbols. "Taejun, look at this," Mireille whispered, running her fingers across the symbols. Her voice echoed in the cavern. "These patterns repeat here and here. It's not random carving. This is a language. An organized language." Taejun nodded slowly. He had suspected as much, but hearing Mireille confirm it sent a chill down his spine. For the past 6 months, his team had been excavating beneath the Korean peninsula after discovering unusual geological formations on satellite imagery. They had gotten special permission from the government, and only a select few knew about their discovery. Now, standing before this impossible door, Taejun understood why they had been sworn to secrecy. "We need to document everything," Taejun said, pulling out his camera. "Take pictures of every symbol. We need to understand this before we tell anyone else." For the next 3 hours, they worked in silence, photographing and sketching the symbols. The work was meticulous and slow, but neither of them minded. They were standing at the edge of something monumental. Something that could change everything humanity knew about its own history. When they finally finished, they sat on the cold stone floor, exhausted and overwhelmed. "What do you think it is?" Mireille asked, staring at the metal door. "A tomb? A temple? Some kind of shelter? I don't know," Taejun admitted. "But whatever it is, someone very advanced built it. Look at how perfectly the metal has been preserved. There's no rust, no corrosion. After thousands of years, it's still intact." Mireille pulled out her laptop and began transferring the photographs. As the images loaded onto her screen, she started to analyze the symbols using pattern recognition software. Hours passed. The sun began to set outside the cavern entrance, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Neither of them noticed. They were too focused on their work. Then, Mireille gasped, "Taejun, come look at this." He moved to her side, and she pointed at her screen. She had arranged the symbols in several different sequences, and in one particular arrangement, they seemed to form a pattern. The pattern resembled mathematical equations, mixed with something that looked almost like coordinates. "These could be star positions," Mireille said slowly. "If I'm reading this right, these symbols might be marking points in space. Specific stars, maybe. Or planets." Taejun felt his heart racing. Star charts. Someone had carved star charts into this ancient door. That meant whoever built this facility was not only advanced, they were spacefaring. They understood the cosmos in a way that even modern humanity was still learning. "We need to get back to Seoul," Taejun said, standing up. "We need to show this to Commander Kwan at the Defense Force. This is too big for just us now." They packed up their equipment and made their way back through the cavern toward the entrance. The sun had nearly disappeared below the horizon, and darkness was falling quickly. As they climbed toward the surface, neither of them heard the faint humming sound that had begun to emanate from somewhere deep within the metal door. Back at their university laboratory in Seoul, Taejun and Mirai worked through the night. They had called Commander Kwon, and he was waiting for them in a secure facility. Kwon was an older man, with a weathered face and sharp, intelligent eyes. He had spent his entire life protecting Korea, and now he was being asked to protect something far bigger than any of them had imagined. "This is extraordinary," Mirai said, showing Kwon the star chart analysis on her laptop. "These coordinates match known star systems, but some of them don't match anything in our current astronomical databases. The civilization that made this was looking at stars from a different perspective than we are." Kwon studied the images carefully. His face remained calm, but Taejun could see the tension in his jaw. This changed everything about humanity's understanding of itself. "I'm authorizing a full military expedition to the site," Kwon said finally. "We're going to excavate that entire facility. And this stays classified at the highest level. Only the president and the most trusted members of the government will know about this." Over the next few weeks, a massive operation began beneath the Korean peninsula. Military personnel, scientists, and engineers worked around the clock to carefully excavate the area around the metal door. As they dug deeper, they discovered that the door was not the entrance to a small chamber. It was the gateway to an enormous complex that extended far beneath the earth. Tunnels branched off in multiple directions, and the deeper they went, the more they found. One night, as Taejun stood before the main metal door with a team of engineers attempting to open it, something unexpected happened. A soft blue light began to glow from within the symbols. The light grew brighter and brighter, and then the entire door began to emit a deep humming sound. The sound was almost alive, almost purposeful, as if something ancient was waking up after a very long sleep. Then, a voice spoke. It came from everywhere and nowhere at once, echoing through the chamber in perfect Korean. The voice was calm and measured, but it carried the weight of countless years. "The Protectorate has been dormant for 50,000 years. External threats detected. Reactivation protocol initiated. Lav. Re. 2. Everyone in the chamber froze. Taejun felt his knees weaken. The facility was not just old, it was ancient beyond measure, and something inside it had just woken up. Mirai grabbed his hand, her eyes wide with fear and amazement. She looked at Taejun, and he could see his own confusion and wonder reflected in her gaze. They had opened a door to humanity's past, but they had no idea what was about to step through it. The blue light continued to glow, and deep beneath the earth, systems that had slept for 50,000 years began to power up. The future of humanity was about to change forever. The blue light continued to pulse through the chamber, casting long shadows across the faces of the stunned scientists and soldiers. The voice that had spoken was unlike anything anyone had ever heard before. It was neither male nor female, but something timeless and eternal. The facility continued to hum with life. As ancient systems activated one by one, Dr. Hai-il pushed her way through the crowd, her eyes wide with both fear and fascination. She was the chief scientist of the excavation team, a woman in her mid-40s with sharp features and an even sharper mind. Her white laboratory coat was covered in dust, and her hair was tied back in a practical bun. She had dedicated her entire career to understanding Earth's mysteries, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. "Is there anyone here? Can you hear us?" Hai-il called out, her voice steady despite the adrenaline pumping through her veins. She was trained to approach the unknown with calm and logic, and that training was serving her well now. The humming intensified, and the symbols on the walls began to glow brighter. Screens emerged from the walls themselves, technology so advanced that it seemed impossible that it had been waiting beneath the earth for 50,000 years. Images appeared on these screens, showing star maps and strange data that scrolled past too quickly to read. Then the voice spoke again. "I am the archive. I am the consciousness that has protected this facility for 50,000 years. I have been waiting for the day when my creators would return, or when their descendants would reach sufficient technological advancement to reactivate me. Taejun stepped forward, his mind racing with questions. Who were your creators? They called themselves the Architects. The archive replied. They were human. They achieved spacefaring civilization and traveled across the stars. They encountered threats that threatened all life in this galaxy. To ensure humanity's survival, they seeded their genetic heritage across thousands of worlds. A stunned silence fell over the chamber. The archive had just revealed that humanity was not unique to Earth. There were human colonies spread across the galaxy, descendants of an ancient civilization that had existed 50,000 years ago. Mireille was already taking notes frantically, her hands shaking with excitement and shock. Why did they leave this facility? What happened to them? The archive displayed images on the screens now, showing scenes from a distant past. Taejun and the others watched as holographic images played out before them, like a movie. They saw vast spaceships and beautiful alien worlds. But they also saw something else. Something that made everyone's blood run cold. They saw a darkness spreading across space, consuming everything in its path. 50,000 years ago, the Architects encountered an enemy, the archive explained. A hive-minded species called the Vorath. The Vorath are parasitic creatures. They consume civilizations from within, absorbing knowledge and biomass to strengthen themselves. The Architects fought against them for centuries, but they knew they could not win forever. The Vorath are relentless and nearly impossible to destroy completely. On the screens, Taejun could see images of horrifying creatures. They were not like any life form he had ever imagined. They seemed to be made of living shadow and teeth, with too many limbs and eyes that glowed with an alien intelligence. The thought that such creatures had existed 50,000 years ago, and might still exist somewhere in the galaxy, was almost too much to comprehend. The Architects made a choice. The archive continued. They knew their end was coming, so they created failsafes on each world where they had seeded human life. They created me. My purpose is to protect humanity and to pass on the knowledge of the Architects to their descendants when the time was right. Commander Quan stepped forward, his military mind already assessing the situation. How will we know when the Vorath are coming? Are they still a threat? Well, when they rezonks, the Vorath are tapped. When the Vorath are.com. That is why I have activated now, the archive said. Sensors throughout this solar system have detected an anomaly at the edge of your space. A Vorath seed ship has entered this region of space. It is not yet aware of Earth, but it is scanning nearby outposts. Its trajectory suggests it will eventually discover this world. Fear gripped everyone in the chamber. The implications were staggering. Somewhere in the dark void of space, a ship full of ancient, parasitic aliens was heading toward Earth, and Earth's only defense was an ancient facility that had been asleep for 50,000 years. What kind of weapons do we have? Quan asked, his voice taking on a sharp military tone. Follow me, the archive said. The group made their way deeper into the facility. As they walked through corridors that seemed to have been designed by beings with an almost incomprehensible understanding of architecture and engineering, they passed through massive metal doors that opened automatically. The walls themselves seemed alive, covered in bioluminescent patterns that provided light without any visible source. Finally, they emerged into an enormous hangar. The space was so vast that it seemed to stretch on forever. And inside this hangar were vessels unlike anything humanity had ever created. They were sleek and dangerous looking, with lines that seemed to cut through the very air around them. There were also weapons systems, massive and imposing, mounted on the walls and floor. They looked like they could destroy an entire city with a single blast. Jiwon entered the hangar with another group of military personnel. He was a young soldier, only 29 years old, with the muscular build of someone trained in combat. His eyes were wide as he gazed at the impossible technology surrounding him. He had been selected to be part of the security team for the facility, And now he was standing in a weapons repository that made every modern military on Earth look primitive by comparison. These vessels are equipped with technology that exceeds your current understanding by centuries, the archive explained. They were designed by the architects specifically to combat the Vorath. They are powered by energy sources that are efficient and virtually limitless. They can maneuver in ways that would destroy an ordinary human pilot due to the G-forces. But with proper neural interface technology, a human pilot could control them. Jiwan found himself staring at one of the smaller vessels, a craft no larger than a modern fighter jet, but with aerodynamics that seemed to defy logic. Without thinking, he reached out toward it. "Do not touch it yet," the archive warned. "The technology is incompatible with your current physiology. However, Dr. Hail's team can work with my systems to create the necessary neural interfaces. With preparation and training, humans can pilot these vessels." 2. Dr. Hail's mind was already racing with possibilities. She turned to Taejun and the others. "We have work to do. The archive is right. If we can interface human pilots with these systems, we might have a chance. We need to study everything here. We need to understand how this technology works." Mireille was recording everything, documenting every word and every image. She understood the historical significance of what was happening. This moment would be remembered forever. The day humanity learned that it had once been great, and that it might need to be great again to survive. As night fell outside, inside the facility, the most important scientific work in human history was beginning. Teams of engineers, scientists, and military personnel moved through the corridors, analyzing, studying, and learning. The archive guided them patiently, offering information when asked, revealing the secrets that the architects had left behind 50,000 years ago. Above them, somewhere in the darkness of space, the Vorath seed ship continued its journey toward Earth. Unaware that on a small blue world, humanity was beginning to remember what it had once been. The message came through the communications network at 3 in the morning. It was from the Galactic Federation, an organization that most humans had only heard about through the news broadcasts from 50 years ago. Back then, when first contact had been made, the Federation had acknowledged Earth as a developing world and had offered limited trading rights. Since then, Earth had been largely ignored by the greater galactic community. But this message was different. It carried the signature of Ambassador Lissara, and it demanded an immediate response. The communication was encrypted with security protocols that indicated its extreme importance. Commander Kwan stood in the secure command center, reading the message on a holographic display that the archive had created specifically for his use. "We are aware that you have activated an ancient facility," the message read. "This action has triggered alerts in our systems. We are sending a diplomatic envoy to Earth immediately. The nature of this facility will determine whether Earth remains under our protection or is classified as a threat to galactic stability. Prepare for our arrival." 8. Kwan felt his chest tighten. The Federation knew. Somehow, despite all their precautions, activating the facility had sent signals throughout space that the Galactic Federation had detected. He immediately called Taejun, Mireille, and the other leaders of the excavation team. Within hours, they were gathered in a secure conference room deep beneath the city. Holographic displays showed star maps and communication logs. The archive was connected to the system, providing its analysis of the situation. "The Galactic Federation is powerful," the archive explained, its voice calm and measured. "However, it is fragmented and inefficient. It consists of many different species, each with their own agendas. Some want peace. Others want power and resources. They have kept Earth isolated because we are considered primitive and therefore unprofitable." Taejun leaned forward. "What does the Federation really want?" "They want to understand what kind of threat or resource you represent," the archive said. "An ancient facility like this changes the calculation. They will want to control it or destroy it. Depending on what they determine, is in their best interest. 3 days later, a small diplomatic ship descended through Earth's atmosphere. It was elegant and beautiful, covered in patterns of bioluminescent light that seemed to shift and change as the vessel moved. It landed in a specially prepared area outside Seoul, and a delegation emerged. Ambassador Lysara was unlike anything most humans had ever seen. She was not human, but she was not grotesquely alien either. She had a vaguely humanoid form, with graceful limbs and intelligent eyes that shimmered with colors humans had no names for. She wore robes that seemed to be made of living light itself. And when she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. "I am Ambassador Lysara," she said, addressing Commander Kwan and the assembled delegation. "I have come to assess your species' claim to an ancient facility. This is highly irregular. Ancient facilities are typically dormant and inert. The fact that you have activated one suggests significant technological advancement. We need to understand how this has occurred." Taejun stepped forward. "The facility activated automatically when we reached a certain technological threshold. We believe it was designed as a fail-safe by the beings who created it." Lysara's eyes narrowed with interest. "The beings who created it? You mean the architects?" Mireille nodded. "The facility's AI, the archive, has explained that the architects were human. They seeded humanity across the galaxy." A long silence followed this revelation. Lysara seemed to be processing this information, as if recalculating everything she knew about humanity and the galaxy. Finally, she spoke, and her voice had changed. It was no longer diplomatic or neutral. It carried weight and urgency. "This changes everything," she said. "The Galactic Federation must know about this. If humans have an ancient facility, and if the architects were indeed human, then humanity's status in the galaxy is fundamentally different from what we believed. However, I must warn you of something. There is a reason the Federation keeps close watch on certain regions of space. We have detected the presence of the Vorath." Everyone in the room froze. The Vorath. The same creatures that the archive had warned them about. The same parasitic aliens that had destroyed the architect's civilization 50,000 years ago. "Where?" Kwan asked sharply. "At the edge of your solar system," Lysara replied. "A seed ship arrived 3 days ago. We detected it and sent a warning to the nearest outpost. The outpost did not respond to our follow-up communications. The implications were clear. The Vorath had found the outpost, and the outpost was now destroyed or compromised." Captain Daesung entered the conference room at that moment. He was a man in his 40s, weathered by years of military service, with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. He had been put in charge of Earth's newly activated defense forces, and he had been coordinating with the archive to understand the ancient weapons systems. "We have the vessels operational," Daesung reported, "and we have pilots ready. If we need to engage the Vorath, we can begin operations within hours. You understand that you would be going up against a threat that destroyed the architects?" Lysara asked, studying Daesung with those shimmering eyes. "We understand," Daesung said firmly. "But we're not fighting with the architect's old technology alone. The archive is still active, and it's been learning about us. We might have advantages they didn't expect." Over the next 48 hours, preparations accelerated rapidly. Ji-won and Sora, another pilot, underwent intensive neural interface training in the archive's systems. The process was painful and exhausting, but both of them adapted quickly. Their human neural patterns seemed to mesh well with the ancient technology, as if the architects had designed it specifically for their descendants to use. The Vorath seed ship detected Earth and began moving toward it. Messages were exchanged. The Vorath demanded the location of the ancient facility and all its technology. Their message was delivered in a voice that made everyone who heard it feel cold inside. The voice was not one entity, but many, speaking in horrifying unison. "We are the Vorath," the message said. "We consume all. We know all. You will give us what we seek, or we will consume you as well. Quan looked at Daesung. Begin operations. Captain Daesung took his position in the command center. Around him, young human soldiers stood ready at their stations, controlling a defense network that had been built by a civilization 50,000 years dead. On a tactical display, they could see the Vorath fleet approaching. It was larger than anyone had expected, with massive warships escorting smaller attack vessels. All units report ready, came the report from Jiwan, who was piloting one of the advanced fighter vessels above Earth's atmosphere. Launch, Daezung ordered. Human pilots in alien ships flew out to meet an enemy that had destroyed worlds. Above Earth, the sky began to light up as weapons fired and shields activated. The galaxy had ignored Earth for decades, dismissed it as primitive and insignificant. Now, it was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous civilizations are the ones you underestimate. The battle for Earth had begun. 3 weeks had passed since the first battle, and humanity was preparing for war unlike anything it had ever experienced. The Galactic Federation had been informed of the Vorath threat and had responded with skepticism at first, then with fear. Ancient, powerful enemies were not something the Federation took lightly, and they began to mobilize their own defense fleets. But the Federation was fractured. Some species wanted to work with Earth and the Archive's technology. Others saw it as a threat that needed to be neutralized or controlled. Meetings and arguments took place in the grand chambers of the Federation's central station, while down on Earth, military preparations accelerated at a pace that seemed impossible just weeks ago. Senator Haywon took the stage in the Galactic Senate chamber. She was a woman in her mid-50s, with the bearing of someone born to lead. She had been appointed as Earth's representative to the Federation, and she understood the weight of this responsibility. The chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of species, each with their own interests and concerns. The Vorath are not just a threat to Earth, Haywon said, her voice carrying through the chamber with practiced authority. They are a threat to all of us. 50,000 years ago, they nearly destroyed an entire civilization of beings who were more advanced than any of us. We have the technology to stop them. We have the knowledge. But we need unity. We need to stop thinking about profit and power, and we need to think about survival. Some representatives nodded in agreement. Others remained unmoved, their alien features giving no indication of their thoughts. But the seed of unity had been planted. Back in Seoul, Captain Daesung received reports that a massive Vorath fleet was being assembled. The Archive's sensors, which had been carefully calibrated over the past weeks, detected the energy signatures of 1,000 ships massing at the edge of Federation space. The Vorath were coming, and they were coming with everything they had. Mobilize the planetary defense systems, Daesung ordered. All pilots to operational status. We have approximately 5 days before they reach Earth. Jiwan and Sora trained relentlessly. They pushed their bodies and minds to the absolute limit, learning how to work in perfect coordination with each other and with the Archive's systems. Other pilots arrived from around Earth, selected from military forces across the globe. Suddenly, for the first time in human history, Earth had a unified military fighting force. Professor Jiwoo, an elderly historian, worked with Taejun and Mireille in the Archive's information chambers. They had discovered something remarkable. The deeper archives contained not just military information, but philosophical teachings from the architects. These teachings spoke of a vision for a unified galaxy where all species could share knowledge and work together for the greater good. The architects believed that knowledge was power. Jiwoo explained to a gathering of Federation representatives, showing them holographic recordings of the architects themselves, beings who had once walked among the stars. But they also believed that power should be used to uplift all beings, not to dominate them. They created this facility, and they created us, because they believed humanity had the potential to learn and grow and eventually fulfill this vision. Senator Haywon seized the opportunity. She proposed opening the Archive's knowledge to all Federation members, but only to those species willing to join in a unified defense against the Vorath. The proposal was controversial, but as reports of the massive Vorath fleet reached the Senate, More and more species began to agree. We cannot defeat the Vorath alone, representatives from a reptilian species called the Kelthans declared. If Earth is willing to share the knowledge of the architects, we will stand with them. Species after species committed to the alliance. The Federation, which had been fragmented and divided, was beginning to unite under the shadow of extinction. The day of the final battle arrived like a storm on the horizon. The Vorath fleet appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system. Thousands upon thousands of ships, their hulls black and menacing as they moved through the void. It was the largest military force that any of the Federation species had ever assembled against a single enemy. Daesung took his position in the command center. Around him, officers from Earth and officers from Federation species monitored screens filled with tactical data. The archive's voice remained calm, providing real-time analysis. All Federation forces report ready, came the communication. Begin the engagement sequence, Daesung ordered. The battle that followed would be spoken of for generations. It was not a simple clash of ships and weapons. It was an intricate dance of strategy and counterattack, of pilots pushing their vessels beyond theoretical limits, of ancient technology combining with new Federation defenses. Jiwan led a squadron of Earth fighters against a Vorath capital ship. The ship was vast, larger than a mountain, bristling with weapons. To attack such a vessel would have been suicide in conventional warfare, but Jiwan was not fighting with conventional weapons. He had trained specifically for this moment. Under Sora's covering fire, he dove into the Vorath ship's defensive perimeter, moving in patterns that seemed to anticipate every countermeasure. His weapons charged with energy that the architects had discovered millennia ago, energy that could tear through any known shield. The phase cascade disruptor fired. The beam cut through space like a knife of pure light, and when it impacted the Vorath ship, the vessel's shields simply failed to exist anymore. The capital ship began to break apart, sections collapsing inward as its structural integrity failed. But the cost was high. The Federation forces sustained heavy casualties. Ships from a dozen different species were destroyed. Pilots who had become friends and comrades fell during the fighting. The victory came at the price of pain and sacrifice. Then, something unprecedented happened. Deep within the archive's core systems, Taejun and Mireille discovered something that the architects had left behind. It was a message, a transmission device that could broadcast across the entire galaxy, one that had been waiting for 50,000 years to be activated. The message was simple but powerful. It was recorded by an architect who stood in this very facility centuries before they disappeared. In their own language, but translated by the archive into all known galactic dialects. They spoke of their vision. They spoke of building a civilization where different species could share knowledge and purpose. They spoke of the architects' belief in the potential of their descendants. When the transmission was broadcast, it affected everyone who heard it. Species who had fought against each other for millennia found themselves moved to tears. The architect's vision, transmitted across 50,000 years, reached into the hearts of beings they had never imagined would exist. The Vorath, hearing this message, seemed to pause in their attack. For just a moment, the hive mind that drove them faltered. It was only a moment, but it was enough. The Federation forces, inspired by the message and united in common purpose, launched a coordinated assault. Fleet after fleet attacked the Vorath formation. The enemy ships, thrown into temporary disarray by the transmission, could not mount an adequate defense. The Vorath began to retreat. The vast fleet that had seemed unstoppable just hours before broke apart and scattered, pulling back toward the edge of Federation space. Their command voice, the thing that called itself Vexthar, sent one final message before its communication systems were destroyed. "You have won this battle," it said. And even in defeat, its voice carried menace. "But know this, humans of Earth, we are not truly alive. We are the manifestation of a hunger that existed before your universe. We will return. The architects could not stop us. You will not stop us. This is only a pause in an eternal war. The transmission cut off, and the Vorath fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel, disappearing from the galaxy's immediate space. The battle was over. Humanity had not just survived. It had led the galaxy to victory against an enemy that had once nearly destroyed civilization itself. But the cost had been paid in blood and sacrifice. In the command center, Daesung looked at the reports of losses. Hundreds of Federation ships destroyed, thousands of pilots and soldiers dead. And yet, among the human forces, the losses were proportionally lighter. The Architect's technology, combined with human ingenuity and determination, had proven itself once again. Outside, on Earth, celebrations began. But they were celebrations tinged with solemnity, with recognition that the future would never be simple or safe again. The galaxy had learned that a world they had dismissed as primitive had the power to change the course of galactic history. Jiwan landed his fighter on one of the orbital platforms, his hands shaking as he powered down the systems. He had survived. He had helped save the galaxy. But he knew what Vex Thar's final words meant. The war was not over. It was only just beginning.